When we came back from Apollo 11, we were put into quarantine for a couple of weeks with a huge colony of white mice. And whether we had had a wonderful, successful flight or something that was a total disaster for humanity depended on the health of those white mice, because scientists, a number of them, were predicting that we might have brought back deadly pathogens from the moon. So when we were locked up in quarantine, and the questions directed to me were along the line of, well, weren't you lonely? You were the loneliest man in the whole lonely history of the whole lonely solar system by yourself behind a lonely moon. Weren't you lonely? And I'd say no, and I'd start talking about the white mice. I was reading a book by John Steinbeck at that time of Mice and Men, and it was true. The three of us had gone to the moon and come back, but was that a wonderful success or a god-awful failure? Well, depended on the health of the white mice. And so when I think of that title again of Mice and Men, I think I put the mice up there ahead of the men. They're more important.
Okay. We're going to go now to Stephen Young with Spaceflight Now.
Stephen Young with Spaceflight Now and Astronomy Now. I'm not sure who wants to address this, but I think in the 60s when you landed on the moon, people thought that probably you'd be celebrating the 50th anniversary at the Lunar Hilton overlooking the Sea of Tranquility. And obviously that hasn't materialized, but do you think space tourism has a future, and do you think people will get to see the things that you have seen in the not too distant future?
I certainly think so. I think it'll happen, and I think people are going to get a view of the Earth that these guys got. I'm ready to go, as a matter of fact. Take me. That will change all of their opinions and perception of what Earth and how it fits into this whole puzzle. So I'm all for it, and I think it will. It's not going to be as fast as everybody thought right off, but it'll get there, I think, and I'm all for it.
Last night at the cocktail party, I had 3 people come up and they said, we can't wait. We're on the list of Virgin Galactic. And I said, what number are you? 298 or something. What number are you? 648. And man, they're chomping at the bit to go and pay their money. And I think it's going to accelerate when the other companies get there and get their man rated. And I think I don't think it's going to be a stampede at first, but they'll be able to fill up the vehicles with the people, and it's going to be a great thing. I told these people, I says, when you get up there, don't unstrap, just look out the window. That's going to be the beauty of it all, is to see Earth from that position will beat zero gravity. You can do $5,000 to the Vomit Comet down here if you want to, but you go up there and you got a view that is incredible. So I think space tourism has a bright future.
Hi, everyone. This is Chabeli Herrera with the Orlando Sentinel. Thanks so much for doing this, and congrats. I'm wondering, we've seen some public polling about just public opinion on going to space, going to the moon, Mars, an asteroid. People seem to be pretty divided and not very much behind the idea of returning to the moon is an important thing that we should be doing. So I'm wondering what your elevator pitch would be, your 30-second elevator pitch to the public as to, for folks who have been there, why going to space travel, whether that be an asteroid, Mars, or the moon, is important for our society as an endeavor, something that we need to put financial resources behind and public support behind for whoever wants to take it. Thanks so much.
Jeff, hello?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Just checking.
I was looking for our next target out there.
My answer to that may be a little different from other people, but my answer to that is a much bigger picture. I think the experience of, in particular, Apollo 8, that first view of the Earth, and if you look at that in the larger term, all of us, Mike and the guys went around to 60 countries or something like that after the Apollo 11 mission, and if it wasn't Mike, I'm giving him credit for it anyway. The comment I heard was no matter where they were, every continent, everybody said, we did it. Everybody owned it. It was we, people from Earth. And it seems to me that the real message here of Apollo is that we now are evolving beyond the limits of Mother Earth. We're going to be moving out, and in fact we have to, in order to continue to evolve and grow and develop. It seems to me that life on Earth now has been moving out from the birth canal, and we are going to be moving out, accessing resources in space which will enable us to continue to move outward. That, to me, is what's really important about the Apollo missions, frankly.
Mike, did you have anything?
Well, I like to sum all of that up and call it outward bound. I believe that was from a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson or someone like that. I like to think of this as outward bound. In the I was going to say in the part that we were involved with, I thought we were just a small link in a chain of events, and going beyond Earth orbit, of course, is the first step. Going to the moon or bypassing the moon is the second. I think Mars is pretty much the third. But whatever we do, I like to just think of it as I don't want to live with a lid over my head. I want to remove that lid. I want outward bound. That's where I want to go, to be part of an outward bound movement.
Just a comment that Rusty talked about all the countries they visited, and that was we did it. And so I think space does that. And the people, I think, are nearsighted if they say, why are we spending so much money on space? Back in Apollo, we didn't spend any money in space. It was all spent in the United States of America. 400,000 people employed. And the technology spin-offs from all of that we are enjoying today in multitudes of people around the world. And the same kind of investment in the future, I think, is going to pay off the big dividends so that we can enjoy the leisures that we have and the opportunities. So I think space exploration is the Christopher Columbus of the future, if you will, especially Mars.
So we have time for one or two more questions. We'll start with Jackie Goddard.
Hello, thank you, and happy 50th. I'm Jackie Goddard from the Times of London. I just wanted to ask whether if Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had not made it back from the moon, how would that have changed the course of space exploration? And Mr. Collins, can you tell us a little bit about your thought process when you contemplated that? Thank you.
Well, it would have, it would have certainly...
Could you repeat the last part of your question? The
Yeah.
first part was what would have happened to the space
If they
exploration
had not made it
program
back from the moon, what would have happened to the future of the space program? Where would we be now? And I wanted to ask Mr. Collins what went through his mind. I know he thought about that, and what was your thought process over if they had not come back?
So many eventualities on a project as complex as Apollo 11 to the moon and back. We tried to make plans for those that we could make plans for. What happened if Neil and Buzz were marooned on the surface of the moon is nothing that we ever discussed. We didn't have to discuss it. We weren't that stupid. We knew darn well if they couldn't get off from the moon, they were dead men. I had no landing gear on Columbia. I couldn't go down and help them in any way. So I had a choice. I suppose I could commit suicide, or I could head home, and I was going to head home. Wouldn't have been happy to do that, and I'd be a marked man for the rest of my life, and I knew that. But that was just the reality of it, and as I say, that was impressed in the back part of our brains somewhere, that we knew that. Now, how much it was on Neil and Buzz's mind that they might get marooned, I really don't know. I think they were very success-oriented, and I think the statistics were for them. But, you know, NASA, in its wisdom, always tried to have redundancy, and yet when you look at the design of the lunar module, there was one combustion chamber, one little rocket motor, and that motor had to work, yes or no. If that motor didn't lift them off, they were dead. I was coming home.
Okay, we've got time for one more.
Gentlemen, thank you. Greg Pallone, Spectrum News 13. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here for us. We appreciate it. And to echo that, you know, you guys have been great throughout all this. So I wanted to ask Charlie specifically, could you just, and we know a lot of the highlights from the mission. We certainly know Apollo 11 and the mission and hearing you. Can you just give us some of your highlights from that period of days? What are some of the things that you have thought about over the years? And can you kind of give us a little run through of that, just to kind of recap for us? Thank you.
Well, I was very privileged to be assigned to that mission as Capcom. I had done the same job in Apollo 10, except for the landing, of course, but it was activation and checkout of the lunar module, and 10 was very similar to what we were going to do on 11. So our whole team from Apollo 10, Krantz being the flight director, all went over and started training with Apollo 11. And so I felt very confident that we were going to have a successful flight. Things were really going well in the missions up until that point. And so we were very positive about success. I never heard anybody wringing their hands or saw anybody wringing their hands, oh my God, what are we doing this for? You know, and so we were willing to take the risk back then to make these missions successful within reason. And so the total flight, I don't know how many, in 11 days or 7, 8 days, whatever your mission was, I don't know how many times our group was in mission control. We had 4 flights, didn't we?
We had 4 teams.
4 teams, and so everybody had a specific, you were...
I was on the first ship.
First ship at liftoff that we just had today. We had Krantz, we had the landing primarily. And so we were all trained for it, and that teamwork, I'm sort of, what I'm trying to say is that the teamwork and we had a positive attitude about this flight. We were going to do all we could to make it work and to get there and get back safely.
So I believe the flight director usually gets the last word. Gerry, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with the group before we go?
Well, just to say that it's really nice to get back to Florida. I spent 4 years as the deputy director at Kennedy after Apollo, and I've made some great friends, some of you in the press. And it's really nice to come here and be here exactly 50 days, or 50 years, I'm sorry, since the Apollo 11 launch. And the guys, the people here at the Cape are some of the most dedicated, hardworking. They got us started. I was always, people ask me, what did you think, what was the most dangerous part of the flight? And I still say It was the Saturn launch. You were just sitting on the top of a bunch of potential problems called fuel and oxidizer. And if it ever got away from you, it was not going to be pretty, and it never did. And a lot of that has to do with the people at Huntsville that designed it and built it, and the people here that made it fly.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to our Legends of Apollo. So I'd like to invite the photographers to come forward for a special photo opportunity. If you gentlemen wouldn't mind standing shoulder to shoulder. Charlie, if you'd come up too.